Today we're going to finish up how to pray. We've been in the Lord's Prayer this is our 6th week now, looking at every line of the prayer. Today we're going to end with the Doxology, as it's called. For yours is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. This is an awesome little part of the prayer. And there's some really cool background. If you're a Bible student, I'm kind of a word nerd. I'm a history nerd when it comes to Scripture. And I love this kind of stuff that I want to share with you at the beginning of this message. Because the background to this really helps us appreciate this segment of the prayer. This is called, as I just kind of mentioned, it's called the Doxology. Bible students for years have called this little tag at the end of the Lord's Prayer the Doxology, because it's just this word of praise. Yours is the kingdom, yours is the power, yours is the glory forever. This doesn't show up. The Lord's Prayer is in Luke chapter 11 as well, but it doesn't include this little segment. It ends with, lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. And actually, this little segment of the prayer doesn't show up in the earliest manuscripts of Matthew's gospel either. Very interestingly, it ends with deliver us from the evil one as well. Here's how this came to be part of our Bibles. It first appears in a document called the Didache, okay, which goes back, as a Hebrew or a Greek word for teaching. What it means is, you remember the Great Commission when Jesus told the 12 to go into the world and make disciples of all nations? Well, they did. And the next generation, okay, right after the apostles, there was a group of disciples who had been won to Christ through that first generation. And that second generation, starting with the second century, many of them were called, the leaders of the church at that time were called the church fathers. Maybe you've heard that phrase before. And so we have this second generation of Christians right on the heels of the death of John. He died right around in the mid-90s of the first century. And they are winning people to Christ, and they don't have a New Testament yet. Okay, in the second century, the New Testament wasn't completed. It was completed in a form very close to ours around the mid-3rd century, when the New Testament really kind of took shape. But they didn't have that yet. So they're winning people to Christ, and they're working on discipling these new believers. And so what they did was they created this thing called the Didache. It was a compilation of all the writings of the apostles. They brought those writings together, and they put them together in a manual. And they used that to teach these new believers. They called it the Didache. And in the Didache, in the Lord's Prayer, in that document, they included this doxology. Yours is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Now, here's why I share that. I want you to see that this has been part of the Christian faith for nearly 2,000 years. It goes all the way back to that very first generation of believers who were won to the Lord after the Great Commission. It's been part of making disciples for centuries. It's included in the later manuscripts of Matthew, right after this season. And so it's been part of a lot of the older translations of the Bible, like the King James would include it, and other translations. So I would bet that a whole bunch of us, if we grew up in the church, we probably memorized the Lord's Prayer in the King James at one point, and we grew up saying, thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. You know, that's just been part of it for us. And the best part of this background kind of info, every single line of this little doxology is in beautiful harmony with all of the teachings of Scripture.